Good evening, dear ladies and gentlemen. We are starting our discussion at 5:30 sharp, and we do hope that we'll finish it on time, because at 6:30 we will have another presentation which is related to innovation-based development of our regions. From 2012, we started a joint project together with the Association of Innovative Regions and Ministry of Economic Development. We started building innovation rating of our regions, and for now we have a number of ratings of which vary in quality and accuracy. So some are more trusted, some are less trusted, but they all had substantial shortfalls, and so we keep seeing this shortfall, and in cooperation with this rating association, we have been working on a rating which will be based on objective data first, so there will be no room for subjective judgment, and the rating for which data will be adequately gathered. So as far as every indicator is concerned, we drill down to atomic data, going down to the surveys used by Rosstat for measuring certain indicators. So we, together with the rating association, we wanted to make sure that the data which underlines this rating is objective and is accurate. But we have been refining methodology for quite a long time, and several ratings have already been previously presented at Gaidar Forums, and this rating was piloted before. But this is the first rating system with the new methodology, and today we would like to listen to the presentation highlighting the methodology and approach to this rating, and we'll also have a panel discussion. And so we will listen to our experts, we'll listen to the questions from the audience, so we'll talk about the results of introducing this rating, and we'll listen to the critical comments regarding the methodology and validity and relevance of this rating, whether this rating accurately reflects position of the regions in terms of their innovation-based development. And we have heads of regions here and their deputies, and I would like to thank them for their time. So let's start with the presentation first. So I would request Rosa Simonova, who is the project head of Association of Innovative Regions of Russia. I would request her to show the results. Good evening, dear ladies and gentlemen, and could you please give me a clicker? So we are delighted to show you the results of Innovative Regions of Russia, the rating which was developed in 2017. We started this work in 2012, and since then our team has been updating and refining the rating methodology. And that rating was publicly discussed several times, and it represents the up-to-date development level of all the regions of the Russian Federation, and we pay particular attention to the position of different regions in this rating and the change dynamics. So this rating was developed for the benefit of executive authorities of the regions of the Russian Federation and of the Russian government. So this is a pragmatic exercise, and the outcome of this rating is analytical reports regarding position of particular regions. These reports include the general parameters of the innovation approaches and particular guidelines and recommendations regarding working out policy. We need to ensure data accuracy, and this is one of our key tasks. And in 2017, this rating was prepared with an active support from the federal development institutions, from the Foundation of Supporting New Forms of Education, from the Russian Cluster Observatory of the Institution of Statistic Research of High School of Economics. So some of these data which became part of the rating, for example, the division by clusters and technoparks, this data is coming from open sources and also from specialized organizations, and that fosters different organizations to provide more accurate reporting to these databases. So non-provision of the requested data reduces the position of a particular region in the rating system. So starting from 2016, this rating is based on 29 indicators. The version of 2017 is slightly different, as it has 6 indicators more, and this bit here on the chart is called innovation-based activities of the regions. So all these 6 new indicators fall into this category. But there are 3 basic areas like research and development, innovation-based activities of organizations, and social and economic conditions fostering innovation-based activities. Those indicators remained unchanged except for one thing, the indicator which shows the level of digitization and computerization. That one was changed for a more adequate. So the number of, or the volume of organizations which are using high-speed broadband internet connection in percentage of the total number of organizations. The majority of these indicators became part of the rating in 2016, apart from those, and are measuring the situation in 2016, apart from the GDP and GNP. And one of the indicators is the share of small innovation-based enterprises in percentage of the total number of analyzed organizations. This parameter is measured once a year, so we have information for 2015. So the 9 indicators are part. So as you can see, please pay attention to the breakdown of different indicators by the categories. So as far as the new category of indicators is concerned, it reflects various aspects of innovation-based activity. Like that's including support from the federal bodies to interaction with federal development organizations and investment activity. Also, it measures activity of regional authorities in terms of fostering of creation of infrastructure facilities, and it measures the efficiency of regional investment fostering, innovation fostering policy. So innovation transfers are being updated, and we're using expert opinions in order to assess the quality of tenders and the quality as far as innovative technologies are concerned. Next slide highlights the key results of rating implementation. Different regions of the Russian Federation are broken up into 5 categories depending on their level of the innovation-based development. And they are sorted in ascending level, and that's the overall picture. Sorry, descending level. We have leading regions, leading group or leaders or innovators formed by 20. That group comprises 26 regions. 29 regions are regarded as strong innovators, and 30 regions are lagging behind and are regarded as weak innovators. So we have sort of equal distribution by groups. The leaders of the rating are St. Petersburg, number 1, Moscow, number 2, Tatarstan, which is a staunch third place holder, and Moscow and St. Pete, they flipped places. 9 regions of the Russian Federation are regarded as strong innovators, and like Tatarstan, number 3rd, Tomsk, number 4th, Novosibirsk, number 5, Kaluga, number 6, Ulyanovskaya region, number 8, and Samarskaya region, number 9. The group of strong innovators also includes 6 regions, like Bashkortostan, which takes position number 12, Mordovia, number 13, Krasnoyarsk, number 16, Permsky region, number 18, and Lipetska region, number 21. And medium active innovators include Irkutsk region, number 30, and Altaysky region, number 34. So 4 regions demonstrated improvement in the end. They went up in the ranks, like Ulyanovskaya region moved 8 points up and joined the group of strong innovators. Samarskaya region also moved 1 point up. Mordovia moved by 1 point up. Tyumen region moved up by 12 points. And 4 regions have retained their positions, and these are the leaders of the rate. They're the leaders of the chart. Tatarstan, number 3, Tomskaya area, number 4, Novosibirsk region, number 5, and Kaluga region, number 6. 4 regions have fallen back. But that doesn't mean that they, in absolute terms, they display worse performance. But since we are adopting a relative approach, that means that if a region is falling behind, that's because the region which is compared with is advancing quicker. And next slide shows the key bit of our analytical system, which was developed particularly for this rating. I'd like to use Ulyanovsky region in order to demonstrate how this rating indicates the accurate position of the region and how it is used for practical aspects. So here on this diagram, or here on this chart, you can see the representation of innovative system of Ulyanovsky region, and it shows true change dynamics, and it shows the benefits and the shortfalls of the system. So as far as the benefits are concerned, and the strong points includes the share of budget spent for innovation, the share of SME involvement into innovation-based activities, the volume of people employed in high-tech and tech industries and types of activities in percentage of the total, the share of scientifically intensive products, and innovative-based activity. This is the only indicator which is measured based on expert assessments and estimates, and the methodology was developed by Association of the Regions. So weak points of the region. number of articles, published in scientific journals, and citation index, and number of articles which are published in the Russian scientific journals, the share of organizations which are involved in tech activities and tech innovations in percentage of the total, and regional domestic product in calculation per capita, regardless of raw materials industry. So highlighted in yellow, we have those indicators which demonstrate best improvement, and highlighted in green are those which are reducing, which are going down. There are 4 indicators of this kind, and regarding 10 indicators, the region is improving its performance. And also here we are showing the entire rating, and you can see the position of every region in this rating. And we also outline the methodology for this rating. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for the presentation. Probably you will not be able to read it properly on the screen, and you couldn't see the true position of a region in the rating, and that's the main point of it. But I think that over the course of this discussion, you will be able to define position of your region in the rating. But let's start discussing it now. We'll start with Oksana Kozlovskaya, who was at the origins of this rating, and who is the who frequently proposes changes to the methodology of the rating. So, Oksana, please, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, dear Oleg. And I'd like to say that I'm also the chair of the committee, and that committee comprises representative of legislatures from 14 regions of Russia. So that's one thing. And I will represent position which was discussed with the authorities of several regions of the Russian Federation, and first and foremost with the authorities of the Tomsk region. When you walked into this audience today, you were surprised to see that many people here, and that points out to one thing. So there is a lot of demand to have such rating in place, and the regional authorities want to understand how they can benefit from this rating, and are these if it is worthwhile to get involved. Before the trip to Moscow, we talked to Novosibirsk region, to Mordovia, to Ulyanovsk region, with those experts who are involved into making this rating, and they're all unanimous in their decision, in their opinion. This rating is very well required. It is a good indicator which helps to tailor or correct the work of the government of the Russian Federation as far as innovation-based processes are concerned. Today we mentioned the fact that some of the regions shot up in this rating, and sometimes it's not quite clear why they're moving up so quickly. A year ago, when we had this rating review, we realized that the big number of companies which are involved in innovation-based activities are not reporting their activities properly. So we had to organize a string of seminars which has seriously affected performance in line with this rating calculation methodology. So I do think that this rating has a future. And I'd like to thank you, Oleg, for this, because this rating undergoes a public review involving representatives from the regions and experts. And not only we have a chance to discuss the benefits and the shortfalls of this rating, but also based on the results of 2016 review, rating methodologists have substantially improved the methodology, but there is still room for further improvement.
How is a ranking different from a large number of other rankings of innovative activities in the regions that exist in Russia and in the world? Well, in Russia, we also have a ranking prepared by the Higher School of Economics, whom we work with, but now there's another index of technological development, and you all are well familiar with global indices, such as the Global Innovation Index, the European Innovation Index, the Knowledge Economy Index by the World Bank, and so on and so forth. I'm only mentioning them because the difference between the ranking that we are talking about today is that it has a fourth section, innovative activities in the region. And I think it's quite important because this ranking is supposed to assign a rank to a region based on how active the region is in terms of innovative development. And I believe that this section should be kept. We should retain it for the future, and it helps us manage various lines of economic development, and it's a good indicator of the region's activity, because all the federal sponsored projects require co-funding by the region. And when we look at Block 4, such regions as Moscow and St. Pete, they have rather poor positions in this ranking, and one may get the impression that those regions who are moneyed are not that interested in being innovative, because they can resolve their problems using their financial might. However, looking at Tatarstan, and we always admire this republic and the team that's working there, they are very targeted, very dedicated to attract money, to raise money for their region. They have quite a bit of financial clout, but they also have another important component, their strong image in the Russian Federation. And a number of other things needs to be highlighted for the purposes of our discussion. If all participants note the role of high-tech businesses and in the development of the public authorities, and if we look at the 11 indicators out of 29, Rosstat, the Russian statistical agency, only collects data on a few of them, and we just exchanged opinions with the head of the foundation about this discrepancy, and he will come up with his opinion. And as far as the share of SMEs is high, the calculations or the statistical data that is collected does not reflect the full picture. For over 10 years, we've been putting together our own rating of innovative contributions of companies working in the Tomsk region in this industry. And the results are quite interesting. I believe about 1 million rubles were spent on these activities. I just want you to know, we do not know the scales that you work on in Moscow or in St. Pete, because 1 million can be just laughable for you, but our region cannot afford to spend more. So we surveyed 200 companies, and the results were quite serious. Oleg, I'd like you to know that the ranking showed that these innovative companies, they increased their exports by orders of magnitude, and the statistics does not see that. The amount of innovative products that have been produced, so this underestimation was in billions of rubles. So we looked at this, and such mismatch is going to be reflected rather gravely in the ranking of the Tomsk region for this year. So this agency-based reporting, I'm talking about Forum 4.2 of Rosstat, and smart tech residents and small innovation companies working at the university. One other interesting point is that our association biannually analyzes regional laws and regulations that affect innovative development, and one of the laws whom we looked together at with Sergey was the law on small innovative company. And our impression of this law was that it does not provide a lot of impetus to the development of innovation activities in the region. However, our numbers show that such companies are 5 times more active in terms of innovation and innovative development than the average company. So I think we still need to adopt this approach more widely, including other regions. Another point I'd like to make is when we survey the institutional environment, and I think you would agree that the relations between businesses, universities, and political entities that exist in the region and have an impact on the development of innovation. You would say that such surveys would be very expensive. But I'd like to point out that a lot of social surveys, public opinion polls exist, or social studies of other natures. There are a lot of them in Russia, and I think that if we cooperated with them, we would be able to make our surveys much less expensive, because we'll be able to rely on recognized data. Now turning to specific indicators. So the coefficient of fixed asset renovation, I think this should be fortified with equipment updates, equipment upgrades in organizations that are involved in R&D, research and development work, then the number of publications in peer-reviewed journals. In the view of our university community, this would be this rating is dead. This rating criterion is dead, because across the world and in our community, it's sufficient to save your publication in the archive or on other online resources, and that would be it. So you do not need the publication. So another outdated indicator would be organizations using the internet. I think it has nothing to do with innovations. It's an indicator that has to do with the accessibility of the internet. But a vast majority of innovative companies, they exist in big cities. So you see what I'm talking about. I'm trying to make my presentation shorter. I would like to point out that this indicator, competitiveness, well, we also have data that globally in the world there is research, there are studies that can be used. In particular, such studies run by the Institute for Development of Information-Based Society, Higher School of Economics, the Ministry of Communications, and in our view, this is done also in the region, so we are able to get aggregated data, and the global indices are also available. To conclude, I would like to emphasize that we published our data, and it's quite obvious that regions have started to be very detailed, and particularly about what's going on innovation-wise, what factors are holding us back, and what help us move ahead more quickly at a faster pace, which is a good development. All our suggestions are paying heed to. Not all of them are accepted, but at least they all are noticed and considered. So I think that this association of innovative union, they are quite prepared to start developing a national standard that pertains to innovation, not de jure but de facto. We are already using a lot of standard approaches for ranking. Thank you very much, Oksana. I did not stop you, I didn't interrupt you, which means that I'll have to do the same to the other speakers. We only have half an hour left, so I encourage all the next speakers to speak no more than 3 minutes, so that we have an opportunity to work with the audience. So I'd like to turn it to Mr. Kiselov from the Information Processing Center. What are your impressions on the ranking methodology? How can it be improved if such an improvement is needed at all? I have a number of suggestions that, in my view, would help to improve the methodology somewhat. I would agree with Oksana that the most active element of the regional innovative system is innovative companies, which are not part of the body of statistical data. I think we could do some surveys, we could run some research, and I think that those regions that are members of the associations, they will be able to handle this additional load to get better quality statistical data. Out of the 9 indicators, 3 haven't changed their value during 2015 and 2016. They are numbers 1, 2, and 8. The number of students, the first indicator was number of students, the second number of researchers. These 2 indicators are very weakly correlated, if at all, with the innovative nature of the region, and it has to do with the historically shaped system of education in our country. So I think we need to scratch our heads and think about whether or not these 2 indicators are of value. They would be a projection of the federal policy on the regional level, but they are hardly useful for the primary purpose of our research. But in the Altai region, the number of researchers has dropped somewhat, and it's the only region with such dynamics. So another interesting thing would be to see how federal level tools can be used on the regional level. But, you know, considering the haziness of the methodology for doing our evaluations, I think we should have a separate study, a separate survey, and a separate publication to make it better understood by the community. So that's basically it. That's what I had to offer you. But generally, Oksana's presentation was brilliant. Thank you very much, and part of the thanks is for the brevity of your presentation. I would take the liberty and comment on the indicators that haven't changed. When we discussed the structure of the ranking, we all agreed that the ranking should not only measure the activity and the contribution of the authorities of the region, it should provide us with a picture of the region, with a snapshot of the region. Yes, it's based on the Soviet foundation, but it does add to the value of the innovation picture of the region that we are getting. So it's not our task to only highlight those who are doing something. We want to know those who have a lot of facilities, who have a good innovation base, but that are using it poorly. So they are misusing the assets that they have inherited from the Soviet Union. So such regions are there. So they are simply eating their stocks. And there are other regions whose indicators haven't changed much over the last 3 years, but we hope that the indicators will keep growing in the years to come. If we take a broader horizon, then we'll see more of such regions, I'm sure. Now I would like to ask Oleg Kirichenko to come up with his opinion and comment on the presentation. I'd like to point out, I'd like to say that I'm really impressed with this play of the structures when things grow from the bottom up. And a lot of opportunity is there, and a lot of opportunity for feedback loops for communication between creators and those companies that that provide this information. It's an advantage, it's a big plus, but I also wanted to highlight those things that I'm not happy about as far as this presentation goes. If this is a scientific paper, a research paper, then it should have had a comparison of what others did. This element was lacking. And the second comment is that some things are still unclear, although it would be very interesting to classify, to have a taxonomy of companies like medium-sized companies, small-sized companies. But what are the criteria? We should not forget about our scientific approach. Also, what the integral indicators are is also not clear. Do you use experts or do you rely on data? If you use experts, then what are the selection criteria for choosing your experts? And if there is a discrepancy of opinion, how do you deal with that? So that was my second point. My third point is that we need to understand what we want to achieve, whether you want to look at the innovation system as a whole or only innovative activities, because against the background of innovative activities, Web of Science and so on, these things look strange, because these things are not innovation in all cases. They are simply knowledge, and that's because literature and history, well, of course, there will be little innovation there. So we need to have a clearer cut system. So we need to approach our system as a process. So if we approach our task from this side, then why there are no medium-sized companies? If you want to have more companies, small companies and medium-sized companies. Medium-sized companies are very active innovation-wise, but they are not part of your statistics. And also, innovation is not always a plus. If we look at technological innovations, and here we are talking about the ratio between costs of technological innovations and the benefits that are gained. So this can be pretty negative, meaning that the resources spent the result would not be worth the resources spent. So the size of the innovative kernel or innovative core would be an important thing to evaluate, because when I discuss this with my students, some of them would say that, innovation always involves costs, which is a minus, but innovations have pluses as well. So you cannot just throw everything into one basket. Then other indicators need to be analyzed more rigorously. Such an indicator, for example, is the rated weight of innovative goods and services in the total amount of shipped goods. Then here again, we are going to single out a core that makes such goods, and we know from experience that sometimes things look really great, but if we look deeper, then it turns out that innovations are spread across a region and there are no strong leaders. But if you get two strong leaders, then the picture would be quite different, because some regions would thus have very strong cores. Other regions have more cores, but they are weaker. So this is a process-based approach. Another strange thing is that if this is a system, then we need to think about interactions within the system. But you provide us with a static picture. No interactions have been described. You mentioned interactions between companies and universities, between companies themselves, but there are no indicators. But such indicators would be very important. Important at the level of projects and important at the level of analysis of innovative research. Here you can make a lot of wonderful discoveries for yourself. The company may spend its own resources of innovation, or they may try to raise funds from the outside. Another comment that I have, we need to look at the denominator, because sometimes when you have indicator number 2,
like a number of researchers per 1 million people in the region. What do you need this indicator for? A more important indicator is the number of researchers in percentage of the total number of employed, of those who have higher education, because it is the people with higher education who spawn innovation. And in this case, you would see what is the share of highly educated people in the workforce of the region. And there is another thing, like, for example, indicator number 3, which is the share of people employed with higher education in percentage of the total amount of the population. If it is about production, you just need to take employed people. And your picture will change dramatically because of this changed approach. Your ranking will change. And another thing, finally, it's like I mentioned, we need to take a look at the cost, or at the budget which the company is spending for its innovative activities, and need to take a look into the investment into cooperation. So I don't know who is aggregating these figures, but when we see the subdivided ranking, that actually means that you're not happy about the integral indicator or aggregated indicator. That means that you are trying to decompose it in search for something better. But I think we've got to go through it, and we need to put it behind us, and it needs to be replaced with research when you analyze clusters of industries, and these clusters comprise companies which are alike in a number of parameters. And if you build these clusters with regard to the role they play in the innovation, like imitators of innovation or true innovators, then you will see a more accurate picture. And it's not just about ranking, it is about the system that supports decision making. It's about having an industrial process in place which helps you to give a user a picture which will show him what he wants, what he wants to see. So there is some uncertainty in terms of the way you aggregate these parameters and the way you interact with your experts. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for a very substantial feedback. We heard a number of very good proposals, so I'll make several comments of my own. Then I will ask Rosa to also comment on this and answer possible questions. Oksana has mentioned several objectives of this ranking. And it's not just a ranking, it's ranking for the purpose of managing and measuring, because it highlights strong and weak points of a region. So in case we see that there is a shortfall in relation to a particular indicator, that can be outweighed by a better performance in the different areas. So all in all, the innovative performance will be fine. So the ranking itself is a way to draw attention to the way a region innovates and to the position of the region in relation to the others. Because the next step is drilling down to more detailed data. It's like is what we have seen in an example of Ulyanovsk area. There was a prototype of a dashboard indicating how a region is performing in relation to average Russian regions. It's a way to highlight for the region management strong and weak points of the region. It's a cause or reason to think about your strengths and weaknesses and how you can use them. So in this case, the general rating and general ranking is important because it gives you food for thought, and also specific performance against specific KPIs is also important because that highlights your efficiency in particular areas. And regarding those indicators which are missing from here, at the very first stage of this ranking creation, we discussed that with the Minister of Economic Development and tried to assess all these indicators from the perspective as to how easy it is to manipulate these indicators and regions so that we don't have a skewed picture when we calculate the overall results. So the beauty of this rating is that it is built from bottom to top. So the regions got together and agreed on which parameters they will trust, which KPIs they will hold in regard. So they've sat down together and agreed. So these are the parameters which we can trust. And so let's say when you have a survey and that survey shows that we have 100,000 of innovative companies, but Rosstat does not, Russian statistics agency does not have this information, hence it's not taken into account. So in this, with this regard, this ranking does not provide, let's say, equal playground to all the regions. So it is not creating faith. It doesn't make regional authorities to think that their neighbors are not trying to doctor the parameters or manipulate the results. And Rosa, please comment on what we've just heard. Thank you very much for the provided comments. It is very important that you view this rating as a holistic system and as a process at the same time. And I'm looking forward to continue our cooperation. As far as the questions are concerned, I've opened up a folder with methodological guidelines, but for some reason I cannot display it here. So how do we break up all the regions into strong, medium, and weak innovators? We based our methodology on the regional innovation, European Innovational Scoreboard, and probably we have just copied and pasted some of their practices, and some of them do not fit well into our environment. But there was, we didn't want to just have a copy and paste exercise. I don't think that there is a big problem with breaking up the regions into these categories. And as far as sub-ranking is concerned, the main objective of the sub-ranking is to show to the regions their position and somehow explain their position in the overall ranking. And that also highlights your performance in a particular area. And especially if we take the fourth category of indicators, they are significant by themselves. And they themselves is sort of holistic ranking or sub-ranking. And we calculate the methodology. Our methodology is based on just calculating the average number, mathematical average. Do you have any? Do your indicators have weight? No, not really. But we have discussed it several times. Sorry for interrupting you. This is why I'm saying that we need clusters. You don't need to have trust in experts. You need to trust statistics. So if you just use economic and methods of economic and mathematical statistics, then you can use these figures with better accuracy. But for that purpose, you need weight. No, you can just cluster your regions or based on particular parameters. And so you are grouping your regions anyway, but it's being done manually. But now computers will be doing this, and then you will have a more accurate results. I think we are still talking about the same thing. So that ranking system can be further improved so that users can have a different perspective and a different view. But both of these objectives are worthy objectives. Okay, let's give the floor to a professional from the rating business, Sergei Tishenko, the General Director of Expert RA Rating Agency. Thank you very much. And dear colleagues, keeping our time frames in mind, let me come up with several brief comments. So, and we are ready to provide the organizers with our comments in writing. So not to take up your valuable time now talking about nominators and denominators, but we also have a, let's say, strategic view of this rating. It's And first and foremost, it's better to have one ranking system as compared to not having anything at all. So this is a good development, and you may not be happy listening to this criticism, but this is a healthy discussion anyway, because it helps to improve your ranking. And so you need to carry on doing what you're doing. And we will provide you with a document highlighting our comments and criticism. But we would like to propose the following thing. We believe that to a large extent, this ranking does not reflect the capability of a region to innovate or create an innovation fostering environment. Rather, they highlight the desire of the regional authorities to do this, and that's good. But these two things are not equal to each other. So as far as the fourth section of this ranking is concerned, we need to take into account the following parameters. So we need to translate our words into actions, or at least into guiding documents of the Ministry of Economic Development. We need to refer to financial flows, to budgets which are pledged for these activities, because I believe that financial capabilities and investment capabilities of the regions is the basis that underlines the attractiveness of the region for innovation-based technologies. So I think that we need to take it into account somehow. Guarantees and providing loans for innovation-based projects. Do it whichever way you like, but it needs to be taken into account. Tax benefits for innovative companies and innovative projects. So you can do that. You can provide an expert assessment. So probably for a number of interested parties, these tax benefits are more important. So that will highlight the actual capability of a region to create innovation fostering environment. And the final thing, the credit rating of the regions. Doesn't matter how you calculate that, because there is a great variety of ways. You can do your own research and you can take existing rating, but that's extremely important. The capability of a region to attract financial resources from the market, it's almost as significant ability as to be able to provide tax benefits to innovative projects. Ability to invest in particular areas or compensate particular type of costs. For example, Tatarstan has been actively providing regional guarantees or finance projects like Innopolis, Belgorodskaya and Kaluzhskaya regions have been provided tax benefits, which covered capital expenses and some income taxes. How do you calculate it? It's up to you. But we have come up with our proposals and recommendations, and we do hope that you will find it valuable. And that's it. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you for the comments. But actually, it would be very good if Section 4 of this rating could show financial parameters like the tax benefits, for example, or tax costs, as Minister of Finance wants us to put it. So it will be interesting to see if we can calculate this figure automatically, because if we succeed in doing so, if we succeed in getting this figure objectively, and which will be in line with the Rosstat figures, that will be great. That will be great. That will highlight the amount of resources which the region is ready to pledge through the financing schemes or through tax benefits, that the region is ready to pledge for innovative activities. We're not calculating it yet. We have yet to find a way. If we succeed, that will be great. And Sergei Polikov, who is responsible for SMEs, well, not actually SMEs, and he's by the way got his own ranking system. So just tell me, What does your gut feeling is telling you? Is your ranking results are in line with that ranking? Yes, we calculate the indices for the regions, and our methodology is very straightforward. We estimate the number of applications, the quality of these applications, and then we calculate the total budget. And we do this on a yearly basis. And so I'm looking at the results for the previous year, and we see that there is a lot of overlapping in these results. Like, for example, when there are some regions which are equally developing all sectors of innovative activities. And if you take a look at the top 10, Tatarstan is position number 3 in your case and number 4 in our case. Novosibirsk, Tomsk, they are holding similar positions in these ranking systems, but they are among the leaders anyway. So which indicates that these regions are paying enough attention to innovational development of their regions. In some cases, there are shortfalls. If you take Mordovia, for example, Mordovia has a decent rating in your case. In our case, it holds position number 43, or Tyumen, it's 38, and the Tulski region. Well, Tulski region has this problem, and we are cooperating with the administration of the region, and we do hope that they will overcome these troubles. And there are some other matches like Altai and Irkutsk area, 31 in your case and 33 in our case. But if we take a look at the innovative activities, like Altai is holding the same position in your ranking system, and ours, Irkutsk. Irkutsk's position is different. So we don't have a lot of time to discuss this in more detail. I think that we can use either of these ratings and to get a better understanding, and also there may be a point in analyzing the discrepancies between these two ranking systems, since we also analyze the state of innovative facilities. In the recent year we visited more than 100 centers of innovation, and in Mordovia, for example, we know that Mordovia is substantially below its potential. So I think that there is a point in comparing these two ratings and analyzing discrepancies. Just two brief comments. Vox Populi. So do not feel relaxed. Some of your regions, 8 regions, are the staunch leaders, but the 6 remaining regions are among the lagging behinds. But there are other regions which are trying to squeeze between. So they're after you. They're on your heels. Well, shall we grant them membership in our association? I'm not sure, but anyway. I have analyzed this performance, and I've seen that they're not taking the money. For example, Tatarstan has got 4 billion for this, and it's like 5% of our entire budget. That needs to be compared to the gross regional product, and that changes the picture completely. Here we have Moscow, for example, and Moscow is falling behind because Moscow just has 4.2%. Tatarstan, the favored leader, is also falling behind. Speaker is speaking off the microphone.
That's where we're turning right now, Ivan. So please rest assured. Well, we have 10% and by the number of applications, and our beloved Mordovia gets to the front of the ranking, considering its GDP, its the number of residents, and so on. 7%, and by the number of applications, 146 per million in residents, it is ahead of all the other regions. Well, thank you very much for your valuable advice, Ivan. We take it as advice. Sergey, as the chief winner, as the principal winner of this ranking, well, his region took 8 places in various rankings. Not the first places, but the greatest number in multiple rankings. So you, by this indicator, so you get the best KPI, so to speak. And it appears that you have done something very special in terms of your policies. That your region showed such great results in the periods. So please pass the microphone to the gentleman. Well, thank you very much. What we are talking about here is that we are not, there is no need for us to manipulate the numbers. Of course, that goes without saying, and then you can do that. You can manipulate numbers for a certain period of time, but very short one. But then it will become increasingly difficult and then impossible. So with each new iteration of the ranking, you would see that you have more and more weak points that you need to rectify, and 2016 was such a sobering year for us when we understood that we fell rather deeply in the ranking, and we understood that our heirloom from the Soviet Union was running out, and we need to start working actively, start being innovative, and develop better regulations and so on. We took our cues from other regions such as the Tomsk region and so on. So now we have some kind of directorate headed by the deputy governor that personally attends to any issues associated with innovative development. So all these things combined opened up completely quite new horizons for us. And to give you an example, I want to cite 2 things. We became very serious about innovative activities, and we got the so-called technology value, and this valley allows us to create a lot of jobs, to retain talent, the best talent in our region, and even attract talent from other regions of Russia. And today we are opening the first metro park, as we call it, and it has a lot to do with economics and how things should be working. All these things are making us happy, and not for nothing because of the numbers that you cited earlier today. But we also understand that there are still opportunities, growth opportunities. We can continue arguing about the indicators, whether or not they are valid, and what can be done to improve them. But if a region is interested in improving in capitalizing on its strong sides, then the region would have all the opportunities to do so. So thank you very much for your valuation. And Samara also asked for an opportunity to comment, so the microphone goes to row 1. In your case, what of the 3 versions goes? Well, thank you very much, Vyacheslav. I quite agree with the previous speaker a lot. When the original rating was formed, of course, a lot of questions were asked, and about the same number of questions is asked of any ranking or rating that are out there. There is a grain of subjectivity in any ranking. Everything depends on the premises that the organizers of the effort of the ranking assume. But what is important is that we are able to identify the good things and then be able to share them with other regions. Also, we need to be pretty well-rounded in terms of developing our regions, the infrastructure and human capital and so on and so forth. And it's not just innovation that matters. Then, my other point is that the discussion turned out to be very interesting. We have traveled, we have covered a lot of distance, and it appears that the ranking needs to start changing as well in light of new tasks that we are facing, and as my colleagues mentioned, as far as the financial side goes, we need to fine-tune our rankings and re-accentuate the indicators that we use in it. And I hope that this session will help us formulate, and the experts will help us come up with better criteria. One other small remark that was also mentioned by Sergey, considering that regions work with federal institutions of development, it's really difficult to determine, or I'm asking you to determine, to set any standards by which, on which we can rely in our cooperation with the Skolkovo, Rosnano, and so on. Not all regions are successful in cooperating with these institutions, but if we want the federal institutions of development to be more effective, we need to consider this aspect as well. One question from the audience, although we are out, we've run out of our time, but I'll make time for one more question. My name is Vladislav Makarov, Director for Strategic Development from St. Pete, Logica Consortium. Well, my question goes like this. The reports are very positive, very useful, and I thank you for the effort you invest in ranking the regions. But, you know, I'm involved a lot in various events associated with innovation and tracking the dynamics of Russian regions. But recently, I've felt a certain degree of pessimism in the air, maybe because on the global arena, from the standpoint of patents and technological innovation, we are not at the front, and the dynamics are not very positive. And as I was listening to you, the question that popped up in my head was that we talk a lot about indicators, but indicators are things by which we try to rework our tasks into indicators. So if we take an imaginary region which 100% meets the indicators that the ratings are relying on, and a region which is perfect, would it mean that we have attained the global strategic goal that our president, our government are assigning to us in terms of introducing digital economy and so on, and whether it would be whether it would be sufficient for us to get a better ranking in terms of innovation on the global scale? I hope you see what I mean. Oh, sorry for the messy wording. Well, I think that if we are considering what our regions need to strive for, then sure. And any ranking, it would be something relative. It is not detached from reality. I have an example. For instance, we work very actively in energy saving, and there is the Ministry of Economic Development that ranked regions in terms of energy efficiency every year. Now this function has been transferred to the Ministry of Finance, but it's going to be back in economic development. But that rating was a rating that was accepted by everyone. It was accepted as an honest ranking, and regions try to compete to introduce new things. And when we have industry events, those people that are responsible for the implementation of events at the regional, of measures at the regional level, they admit that there are problems. But well, we see where you are going. But there are two things. That this rating has its own task. Other ratings have their own objectives. There are strong and weak sides of Russia as a country on the international arena, patents and loans and so on and so forth. You know all of these all too well. You know, the projection of our weaknesses on the regions is what this rating tasks itself with. And we would like our regions to seriously start thinking about becoming more innovative, and we want our country to rise in international rankings, but there is no direct correlation between local ratings in Russia and global ratings that Russia is part of. What I mean, if we could combine these two processes, but you know, there is no, they cannot be harmonized, or such combination would render them meaningless. So what we did in as far as regions go, we took all the regions and we developed an aggregate, a cumulative rating for a number of regions. So because it didn't matter whether a particular region is the first or the last, but such ratings will never show what a country is able to do. It only sets off some kind of race or competition between the regions. And it just incentivizes them to compete with each other. But if the situation is really poor, then we'll simply identify the poorest region, we'll identify those that are not so poor, and so on. And by comparing such rankings with what European countries do, we were able to identify clusters when some European countries, they actually competed with our regions, so they were on a par. I believe that this general level is what you're looking for. Well, thank you very much, colleagues. I'd like to thank you. We are moving now into the next session. I am asking the panelists to vacate their seats. The moderator is going to be the same. I am calling new panelists on the stage while the audience is, while the people in the audience are changed. Then let's wait. We will start as soon as everybody is seated. Distinguished friends, dear friends, we are going to continue the discussion that we initiated, that we started at the previous session, and Panera, together with the Association of Innovative Regions and the Interfax Group, they are going to together to present their joint report on the development of high-tech business in the regions of Russia. This report is to a large degree based on and this continuation of the innovation rating that we discussed earlier today, but it accentuates, it emphasizes a lot more innovation in the direct sense of the word, such as high-tech business and the condition for running such businesses in the regions of Russia, which this is we exercised a more comprehensive approach in the previous session, which also looked at the infrastructure and a number of other things that were more descriptive of the region rather than the technologies themselves. But now we are going to focus on how innovative business is developing in various regions of Russia. Today we have a very well represented panel, a lot of first-class experts, and we'll try to be on schedule, and so I'll skip my opening remarks and turn it over to two developers. I'm not sure how they are going to organize their presentation, but they are going to present the results of their work, Vera Barinova and Stepan Zuntsov from the Presidential Academy. You have the floor. Welcome. Please hold the microphone closer. Well, good afternoon, distinguished colleagues. I would like to present to you a concept of the national report, and Stepan will shed some light on the more interesting cases that we ran into while preparing the report. The report was prepared by RANEPA, Interfax, and the Association of Innovative Regions, and Interfax facilities were used to do the computations. We have been studying high-tech in Russia for several years. We are ranking-based. We also work with governors in order to get some applications, some products that could be applied in their daily practices. Russia indeed is not a leader in terms of the level of development of high technologies. And myth number one is that there are no high technologies in Russia. They simply don't exist here. In fact, this is not so. Every day we run into high technologies that are developed, that have been developed here. We have iPhones with the glass that was designed and developed in Russia. We also use in vitro for blood tests, and we use Yandex and so on and so forth. Russian high-tech is IKT, science-intensive services, chemistry, new materials, and machinery. Next slide, please. Well, in spite of the fact that Russia is not a leader in terms of high technologies, judging by the Global Innovation Index, in spite of that, the role of high technologies in Russia cannot be overestimated. And another wrong opinion is that even those high technologies that exist, they are not needed, no one wants them, and so on. This is not so very strongly. So more than 1/3 of all workers and 20% of the GDP and 15% of in our exports, high technologies account for those shares. Moreover, in the current conditions, the entire world is moving toward information technologies. Robots are introduced, and high technologies are extremely important for Russia today. In Russia's traditional industries, such as machine engineering, metallurgy, and so on, such developments can lead to a loss of jobs. High technologies also create new jobs, and they also help the economy grow. And Russia can see many new points of growth. And how can those new seeds of growth be cultivated? So what companies are successful in this sense, and how can we have a multiplicative effect in developing high technologies? So our group, based on our report, we can see which regions are fostering innovative development and who are the best performers. And the global objective of our report is to define the points of growth non-related to mineral resources in the Russian economy. So we have worked out a monitoring system which for the benefit of governors and executive authorities. That's an analytical tool that highlights the performance of high-tech industries in Russia, helps track change dynamics, and helps to build outlooks, and also helps develop recommendations. So the analytical product which we are coming up with is highlighting the conditions which are important for those companies. High-tech industries are developing in a harmonic system, so we need to address all these issues like availability of capital, labor resources, raw materials in a holistic system. So governors may be interested to see what is the input of high-tech industries into their gross regional products. What is being exported? What is the value of exports? What is the tax contribution by high-tech industry? How many jobs and new startups were created? And good evening, dear colleagues, and I'd like to give you several interesting examples. In our view, the key challenge which is faced by Russian high-tech industry is the lack of human capital. And
2 hours ago, that was exactly the point of Dmitry Medvedev. Alexander Alison has a very good example. So if the founders of Google and Sikorsky had not left Russia, then our GDP would grow by the value of our oil and gas industry. And actually, talented people keep leaking from Russia. And based on our estimate, in Russia we have 15 million people employed by high-tech industry, but that number is going down gradually. And if we take a look at the chart, then you will see that more than 20% of all people employed by high-tech sector are in Moscow, the Moscow region, and St. Petersburg. And 25% are employed by the regions which are members of Association of Innovative Development. So we asked the question, what are the factors which foster technological development? And we were astonished to see that good living conditions are indicated as as important factors together with capital availability and tax benefits. So creative people and capable people are choosing those regions where they can express themselves better, where they can earn money, where they have a good living conditions, and with the place with good climate. So if you take a look at this picture, then you will see that our southern areas are more attractive for highly educated professionals. So we can see that western part of Russia is more attractive, and also larger city agglomerations are very attractive for professionals, but this is well known. And this is the trend that emerged in the world within the recent 25 years, and innovation activities have shifted towards the south. In 1995, 50% of researchers lived in northern countries like UK, Sweden, Germany, and so on. Now, only 30% of researchers are living in these countries, with remaining moving to the south, like south of France, southern provinces of China, California, and so on. Russia demonstrates a similar trend. Those regions which are more attractive, based on our estimates, those regions which have the regions with good climate, the regions which can provide you with better living conditions, these regions were viewed as more attractive one by professionals. So against the horizontal scale, we have the level of attractiveness, and against the vertical, we have the number of professionals drawn by these regions. From 2008, more than 7 million people decided to relocate. And where did they go? They went to the Moscow region, St. Petersburg, Krasnodar region, Moscow, Bashkortostan, and Tatarstan. A very important point to make here is that there was a number of other smaller regions which had quite efficient quite efficient programs who could attract professionals, like Belgorodska and Kaluzhska region, and with good mortgage lending conditions, for example, or Tatarstan, which is building residential property for rent, and Tomsk region, which also has a number of projects to increase the attractiveness of the region in order to retain young professionals. And the good news for non-metropolitan areas, attractiveness of Moscow has went down significantly in recent years, and this is attributed to the fact that the gap between the income and the cost of living is narrowing. And in 2017, Moscow has almost failed to make it to the top 10 of most attractive areas for professionals. So creative people will create startups in order to implement their ideas, but they need an environment for these startups. And innovative ecosystem is a kind of a buzzword now. What is it? What is this? What is an innovative ecosystem? This is when all innovators clearly know what steps need to be taken in order to develop a competitive product and bring it to the market. So we decided to estimate these conditions. So we tried to estimate in investment risks, availability of financial resources, and availability of information infrastructure and communication infrastructure. And as you can see from the chart, the better these conditions are, then the bigger is the number of startups, or the higher is startup activity. Over 40% of all high-tech startups starting from 2010 appeared in a limited number of regions: Moscow region, St. Pete, Tatarstan, Krasnodar region, and Tyumensky region. Tatarstan is not being questioned here because availability of information and communication infrastructure is the best there, and they have streamlined streamlined system for governmental procurement projects. And in Tomsk region has relatively good performance in terms of startup activity, and they have a unique university ecosystem, unique for Russia. In other words, the conclusion is, if regional authorities invest into infrastructure, if they create conditions fostering innovation, that activity bears fruit, and that translates into highly active startups. We humbly believe that the product we are representing to you now, in other words, this report will be used for analytical purposes, highlighting strong and weak points of all our regions from the perspective of startup activities. Like, for example, we tried to compare Tatarstan and Samarskaya region. Who is better? And they more or less have more or less similar conditions to develop for fostering innovation. So Tatarstan holds the 4th rank in Russia in terms of availability of resources, and Samarsky region is holding position number 7. But the gap is about 10 points. So Tatarstan is number 5th, and Samarsky region is number 15th in a different rating. So if we ask for the details, if we try to see what drives this difference, then we'll see that the Samarsky region is lagging behind in terms of the export of high-tech products, and they don't have. They're lagging behind Tatarstan in terms of infrastructural development. If we take a look at a different, let's say, traditional example, and Tomsk versus Novosibirsk, because these regions are historically competing with each other, and Tomsk is lagging behind Novosibirsk in terms of living conditions and infrastructure, as Novosibirsk has more resources to foster high-tech industry development. They have more HR people, but if we take, they have more HR resources, generally more resources, but if we take a look at the ranking, then Tomsk region is holding position number 10, and Novosibirsk is on the 23rd position. If we try to take a look at the, let's say, narrative, then we'll see that Novosibirsk region has a problem with exporting its high-tech product. And finally, This is what we have previously announced. We tried to locate the points of growth of the Russian economy which are not related to mineral resources and raw materials. Well, Moscow, that's one of the points. Since Moscow commands up to 15 resources for high-tech development, and they have 23, high-tech industry have 23% contribution to Moscow gross regional product. So St. Pete is another big contributor. And other big contributors include regions with big city agglomerations. It is delightful to see that out of the 11 second-level contributors, which are highlighted in a lighter color here on the chart, 7 of them come from the Association of Innovative Regions like Tatarstan, Tyumen, Novosibirsk, and a number of others. A group of regions which have underdeveloped innovative potential and high-tech potential. So take a look at the lower line, Kaliningrad region. So if you take a closer look, you will see that these regions have underdeveloped high-tech potential, meaning that they have less than 2% of resources required for high-tech development, but the outcome is sort of average for the country, over 20%. And the interesting thing about these regions is that they almost don't have resources, but against the lack of resources, they deliver an incomparably big result. So those high-tech myths which we have in Russia, they have there is some substance behind them. But there is also a number of regions in Russia which possess all necessary resources for development of high-tech industries. And there's a big number of technologies, looking at them, you would think that they are foreign brands, but they are in fact Russian, like Wikimapia, for example. So to conclude, we do hope that you'll be using our report as an analytical tool which will allow you to analyze high-tech performance industry development in Russia. Thank you very much for a very interesting talk. And the best thing about it, it makes us ask clarifying questions. And I think people from the regions also have something to ask you about. But before we start an active discussion, I would like to say that, again, it's a very good research. The Minister of Economic Development will benefit greatly from this research when they work on their industry development programs. But I would like to give the floor to Vladimir Gerasimov, the Executive Director of Interfax Group, since Interfax is a full member of this project. So, Vladimir, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for giving me a chance to participate in this truly significant work. And I'm delighted to see that report is getting more and more complex and substantiated, and it starts to reflect truly important points regarding high-tech development. Private companies are viewing this report, see the value in this report in the perspective of using data, and some of this data comes from our systems and our business analytical tools, like Sparko, because we are analyzing the position of small business and contribution of small business. So from our perspective, that's truly important. And 90% we are an IT company, and we recently, in recent 2 years, we set up IT centers in Samara, in Voronezh, and we are searching for other locations which we can support our development. So some of the points of this report may be very beneficial for any business which tries to explore its potential. But the key thing business is interested in is availability of human resources. And so when we open up our operations in new region, sometimes we lack human resources there, so that makes things more difficult. And I'm referring to the comment from PwC. 77% of executives point out that looking for creative people is the key factor of their success, or rather finding creative people. But talented people and HR pool of human resources is a subject let's say a subjective factor, and these research sometimes requires the use of subjective factors, because that just illustrates development of innovative business. And when we talk about innovations, we recall names and faces of high-tech industry who, let's say, define the industry and innovation, or embody innovation. And this report indicates the development of the regional brand, and we are doing this. We are tracking change dynamics of different brand. We are tracking citation indexes, and we are tracking the number of times a region is mentioned. So this is an important point also, because innovation, it's not only about the hardware, it is also about what people think and what people write in media, in social and mass media. That's important. Another important thing is looking at the leaders in the ranking. Just recently we had a project focusing on analyzing performance of a company which like companies like Gaz, and there are big companies of this kind, and actually if you try to get away from the type of industry, among the leaders you will see those which are not normally associated with innovations, like construction, for example, or road construction, or retail, for example. But taking a closer look at the leaders in these industries indicates that, or taking a look at it makes you think at about the industrial profile of the region. And the final thing are the indicators related to credit availability, and because high-tech business it's about high-tech and it's about business, and business is about taking loans, is about servicing these loans and being capable to pay your bills. And in Sparchi, we tried to analyze performance of those companies who, from the credit quality perspective, are looking good, and we are finding quite interesting things. For example, a great dispersion in terms of the profitability level, and our credit quality index, for example, or credit quality ranking, shows that in Moscow, high-tech companies, or 60% of them, are in the low-risk area, so they are unlikely to go bankrupt within 18 months from now, whereas in Tatarstan, such companies make just 5% of the total. So these are important parameters which should be tracked. These are quite telling parameters.
Well, how interesting they are from the standpoint of investors and private business. And another interesting strand of work it is, and I hope it continues into the future. Thank you very much. Now let us start the discussion. Ivan Bortnik. I do not think he needs more introduction. Well, he is out. Huh. Amazing. So let's start from the General Director for Technological Development. Maxim, you have the floor. Well, first of all, thank you very much. I'd like to thank the authors for this wonderful presentation. And I would agree that there are things that can be argued about, but at least they have provoked today's discussion. I would like to approach this report from the standpoint of my personal opinion, and rather than its merits. And I will also say that we've been together in the same region, in the Kaluga region in the Russian Federation. I do not know how I can use this report in the development of my strategy for developing the region, and how I can use it to develop operating decisions. I can make a rather controversial conclusion that Samara lags behind Tatarstan in terms of export, and therefore Samara is less high-tech. No, not at all. In order for us, in order to make Samara more high-tech, we need to step up our exports. Is that what you mean? No, it's not the case. So we need to nurture high-tech companies, and the stimulating exports. I'm not going to get a high-tech structure in my own regional economy. If I understood the presenters correctly, then there's a big question mark here. What is missing? It would be impossible to discuss technologies, high technologies, without discussing the technologies themselves, without considering them in greater detail, at a higher resolution. Well, I think that in terms of practical application of this report in the regions of Russia, and let me try and explain my thought. Many regions of Russia have learned how to raise investments. They've built techno parks, they've established special economic zones and so on. So they have set up the infrastructure for high-tech development. It would be another story. But in midterm, I would say that you won't be able to earn a lot. That's simply because the competition between the regions is really acute, and everybody has learned their lessons and so on. So small innovative companies, if we look at them, how much they pay in terms of taxes in the special economic zones, in technological parks in the Russian Federation. So I'm not sure about the exact percentage point, but it is not anything outstanding. Being the technological development agency, we would like to suggest that we consider other aspects, and it appears that times are going to get worse for regions, and we need to look at them from a different perspective. We need to look at them as clusters of technological competencies that this or that region has. We should not look at them as a collection of enterprises, a collection of companies or industries, classifying them in this taxonomy. We need to see how they work with their raw materials and what they convert them into. Development of robots and assembling of robots is a technology, but the technology or robotic technology as such can be split into microprocessor development and into mechanical development and so on. So all these things can be used not only in robots but also in drives for other machines. And our idea, which and it's the suggestion that I would like to come up with now, is that technology should be looked at from a broader perspective. We are going to discuss very soon issues of technological policy. We are going to map technological competencies and come up with a map of technological competencies, and so that each region can understand what they have, what assets they have, what raw materials, what competencies, what technologies, what processes. So these are quite good. They are state-of-the-art. These are outdated a little bit, and I'm lacking and I'm missing this, and that. So it really is in line with this approach based on clusters and so on. So once we get an assignment to develop such maps of technological competencies, and each map would result in either an investment project, or because we understand that we also need to meet some requirements in terms of volumes, such as composite materials developed in the Ulyanovsk region that are used in aerospace industry. So they are a sprout that needs to be grown. So you need to wrap up your presentation. So we understand all this, and we understand that these things are difficult, that there are no resources in the regions, and therefore the Agency for Technological Development is prepared to get on this boat. And many ideas are still raw. They need to be honed out, and we need a better quality everywhere across the board in technologies and in the methods of their development. So I would like the authors of the report to write down these comments so that they are able to respond and answer the criticisms that we have heard now. So if you live in the region, then you should take this as a criticism. So I told you you were not, you did not need any introduction, but you were out. So I'll tell you why I was out. You know, you see, in fact, I have 3 comments to make with regard to the 2 of them are about the rating methodology itself. So. You know, I was doing rankings sometime in the past, but now I'm quite outside of this industry, and I sympathize with my colleagues. They do everything correctly. They rely on international indicators and so on. But colleagues, I think that it's not only me, but others feel this nagging. Then we had a lot of science-intensive products, well, that's true. But when I'm not trying to offend anyone, and if we take into account such things as audits, financial accounting, and so on and so forth, and I'm not going to say anything about the water transport, because the water transport and machine engineering, they require a lot of science. So, colleagues, I think we need to look. Please do not respond harshly to my words. Well, there will be a response, of course. So, then we need to take into account the specific features of our country. So, we are not yet there. I mean, we are not yet developing science-intensive technologies. Also, I looked at the interaction between the regions and the agency, so 20% here, 22% there, but there are regional regions and associations that would have 20 to 25% in all categories. The same applies here in all our programs, in the total amount of money, and our programs of National Technological Initiative and so on. So there are some specifics that I discussed in other presentations, but all this is correct. Everything matches up. But the third point, and that's why I was out, Stepan mentioned that Mr. Dmitry Medvedev said that the key element would be the people, the human resources. And now we are doing this childhood thing. We are working to support the children, young children. So, well, there are contests between captains. Who knows those captains? Just one person. So it's good on one hand, and on the other hand, there are too few of you who even knows about this contest, captain. But captain is yet another competition, yet another contest that uses the same slogan, Russia and its capabilities. But it's intended, it's targeting school children. And leaders, 200,000, but even at schools, there's another million students, and no one is promising anything to them. So I think everything is done by private companies. They are spending their own resources. Of course, they want to be a part of the presidential initiative, but 400,000 school kids per month, and so we have just a month, but every day 10,000 school children tried to get on this boat, and the contest's name was My First Business. And if we look at the top 10 regions, Moscow holds only 3rd place, and even in the top 10, we only have 5 regions that are members of these associations, and Tatarstan is completely absent from the top 10. So I told Tatarstan's president that it's going to be the next step. Camps, and on the second camps, the word camps, camps in the good sense of the word, like the ones we had in Samara, Kaluga. Those camps are things that companies set up. Then they have a department in the Plekhanov Institute. It's funded by Faberlic, by that company. They train managers there, but they rely on school teams. You know, all the kids are enthusiastic, and the girls from Faberlic are really enthusiastic, so they are interested in growing that potential. Colleagues, so my request to you is please pay attention. No administrations were involved. Now, it's a blogger. They are bloggers, it's their projects, it's their baby, my first business. And these bloggers have 9 million subscribers and so on. So, Benjamin, you need to wrap it up. So, colleagues, let us also include those camps in our field of vision. So then the next contest is going to be related to business as well. We are going to consider how workers are trained and so on. So colleagues, please watch the young generation. These young people are very interesting. There are programs such as school space and so on, space for schools and so on. So you are on your favorite horse. So whatever question you are asked, you are talking about kids, which is the right thing to do, but we are out of time. I would like to thank Sergei Kutsenko to comment on, he comes from the Higher School of Economics. That school also develops ratings, including a rating of innovative regions. Thank you very much, Oleg. Well, in fact, I wanted to point out the topicality of this, the timeliness of this methodology when we compare sectors between different regions. And indeed, if we look at these sectors at the level of the country, not everything is just right. Our measurements show that if we compare Russia to top 45 countries in terms of economic development, then the share of people employed in high-tech industries is much lower, is far lower than in the leader countries. So in spite of the fact that there has been some growth in recent years of this share, but relative to those countries we are still dropping because they are growing faster. So these trends, reindustrialization and developing science-intensive industries, we are not yet in this trend. We need to speed things up, including speed things up at the level of regions. So I believe that your attention to this topic is very timely. What I would like to point out as well is that we do a lot of analytics. We also pay attention to regions. What I'd like to share with you is what things we are looking at. This should be helpful to us all and to our cooperation or joint effort. First off, what is important is that we need to look for non-statistical indicators. It's good that my colleagues use Spark, it's great, but we took a different route. We are in data mining, and the suggestion that we have is to develop an index that would reflect the preparedness of regions for the future, how infected regional authorities are with this innovation germ. We can use an algorithm to make a judgment on different topics. When we go away from statistics, we can monitor things almost on a daily basis. So we are going to get multiple cross sections, and we can run our analytical tools on various indicators that the regions have, how intense they are, what is their quantitative dimension. So these are the things that we're working on, and I hope it will be useful to you to know about them. Another thing that we really like, that we are infected with, again, we are trying to identify those industries that can be sold, those sellable industries are things. They can be science intensive, but there's no restriction in terms of that, such as a clinic. An outpatient clinic can be very sellable, marketable, but there are other areas that develop not because Samara, let's say, is the greatest city, simply because they are so highly marketable. So we are trying these new methods and techniques, and we're testing them out. And as the next step, and I believe this next step is something that's crying for your attention as well, is to consider the specific features of regions, not just to assign a number to a region, but to show what the region is good for. When we are speaking about industries, clusters, and industrial facilities, chains of production, so it's all very clear. We have a lot of international experience that we can adopt to local conditions, but such maps would be very useful. Evgeny, your last point, make your last point, and that will be it. The last point is a very interesting one. It would be interesting to compare regions between themselves, and such exercises are performed not with each other, but with other countries. I believe that Moscow alone can be compared to whole countries. It would be interesting, and the number of highly developed regions that are members of the association, they can be compared to whole countries and not the worst of countries, as our experience doing these exercises shows. We are completing a new iteration of the new innovation report, and our role in this work is to come up with a new update. But we have collected new indicators, more than 100. We have time series, we have comparisons with developed nations, and many of those indices have regional dimensions. We can compare Russia to a very good Liechtenstein, for example. So this wouldn't make sense. It's just an example. Can be Belgium, or the Czech Republic, or Mexico, South Korea, and so on. So I think these three strands of work would be something that might be interesting not only to Higher School of Economics, but to others as well. 3 minutes for concluding remarks to the authors of the presentation. What do you have to say in your defense? All experts and I myself agree that the sectoral chapter of the report needs to be expanded in order to show technological competencies charts. Will be open to cooperation. We do not have such data ourselves. Speaking about groups of industries, Ivan, it's like we discussed that together. I apologize. Okay, I'm not going there. But so we will try. We have taken note of all the suggestions, and I'd like to thank experts and participants. So I only have to repeat the last phrase, thanking all the attendees and experts. Let's take a closer look at the report and see how things change next year.